Hello everyone. So some of you may already know me, to some of you may not know me, but I'm currently a senior. I'm an English student. This is my last semester, which is really exciting but also kind of nerve-wracking, and I'm sorry that I couldn't sit in on your class at 10 o'clock. Unfortunately, I have another class at that time myself, so I'm sitting in on the 8 o'clock class, but I still want to be entirely available to you all in the 10 o'clock class. I also want you all to have some quick tips, just kind of survival strategies to know how to succeed in this class. It's a lot more difficult than I thought it would be whenever I first came in, for example. I had this class my very first semester of college, and it was a really hard transition for me. So I want to give you all a couple tools of the trade, some things that you can know to be entirely successful. For one thing, if you have a pen or paper by you, you may just want to jot down that my study sessions are on Sunday and Thursday from 6 to 8. So Sunday, Thursday, 6 to 8. I'm going to try to have those in the same classroom that you have class, Wiley 201, but I will double check. I don't want to make any promises because I'm not in charge of scheduling, and I will let you all know for sure where those are. If you can't come to any of those times, no sweat. I still want to work with everyone to the best of my ability, and I know that we're all busy. Sometimes maybe we have another commitment at those times, and if that happens, I'm totally up to working with you one-on-one. Just reach out to me at any point. You'll see my email on the Moodle page if you go. By the way, you need to be on the Moodle page. Clearly you're on the Moodle page if you're watching this, so congrats, one of the biggest parts of this class in terms of getting signed up. Done. Some people surprisingly don't get signed up, so you need to do that. Now, before we tally on too much, I want to point out about the class reading materials. The textbook is required. There's a couple of editions of that. Some of the newer editions could be a little bit more expensive. I know that for the past couple of years, because I've been working with this class for about 3 years now, I have used an older edition, and it's been totally fine. It squares up pretty well. If you want to share a textbook with someone else, oftentimes that works as well. I just want you all to realize that the reading is frequent, so if you're sharing someone's textbook, you want to make sure that you have a similar study schedule or that you can actually get it. Sometimes it's easy for someone to say you can borrow my textbook, and whenever you need to actually read it, maybe they're reading, so make sure that if you're sharing textbooks, that you get that worked out so you don't have to worry about that. Your first chapter is due by Friday. Make sure to have it read by Friday. So if you see something on the syllabus that says due by blah, 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 that doesn't mean at the end of that class. It means before the class you need to have that read. So for the Bible, I normally just use a pocket Bible. It's small, it's easy. The font is small, but it doesn't lug up as much material, and it's not as heavy as the big Oxford Bible. If you're really serious about the class or about the learning more about the religion, then sure. It's a great Bible. I know I learned a lot from it, from the footnotes, but it's not necessary. You don't need the huge Bible that's on the syllabus if you don't want it per se. Just make sure that you have a Bible that you can read well. You can also bring in a virtual Bible at times to study with. I suggest Bible Gateway. Bible Gateway. It's really easy. It's exactly what it sounds like. You can Google it. It gives you free versions of all the different translations, whether it be King James or NIV, so that way you can kind of know what you're more comfortable with, which is I like working with it as well. We'll use it a lot in my study sessions. So you'll need 3 major things. Well, 4 if you're counting both of the textbooks. So you'll need a Bible, you'll need your textbook, you will need lots of writing paper. I normally just bring something like this. This is what you all won't see me writing, but if you were an 8 o'clock class, this is what I would be writing with. Just 5 subject notebooks. I'll probably use it for my other classes as well. Just make sure that you bring writing materials every single day. It is so important. Dr. Jawsey mentioned to our class in 8 o'clock, and I'm sure he mentioned to you as well, that if you don't leave class with at least 2 or so pages of handwritten notes, then something's wrong. You maybe aren't getting all that you need to out of that class, and that's right. I thought that was an exaggeration until I went into class myself. If you're having a hard time visualizing how to take those notes, then come to my upcoming study session on Sunday and we'll let you know. But, there's definitely lots of good strategies we can work with. And something else you'll need is you'll just need a folder, whether that's a 2-pocket folder or something in your binder, because something I want to tell you all that so many people don't think about is you need to keep your test. You have about 3 tests, if I'm remembering correctly, before the final. And if you keep your test, for example, test 1, test 2, test 3, you can use those to study with. Some of the questions for the final are taken from the first test, and it makes studying so much easier. Instead of having to reread the whole textbook or all of your huge notebook of notes for the class, then you can just go through your test and see, okay, this is what Dr. Dawsey has asked us before, this is what I can focus on. So do not throw away any of the tests he gives you back. Make sure to keep them. And something else I want to focus on about the test is I'm going to quickly give you all a summary for how those tests are laid out. We'll talk about that later in our test study sessions, but I always think that's a good idea because I know that I get really nervous for tests, and probably some of you do as well. So the tests are normally laid out with several different components. You'll have one of the more difficult parts is a vocabulary section. Oftentimes we may not talk about those vocabulary things in the class, in the lectures at least, so it's kind of like a double whammy. You need to make sure that you're reading, and at the end of every chapter in your textbook, there's a section that says vocabulary. And at the end of those chapters, you need to make sure and just jot down the definitions, even if it doesn't have to be full sentences, just to make sure that you know, okay, I know what this vocabulary word means, and I could have a general gist of how to define that on a test. Because in my time of working as an SI, that's one of the most challenging parts in the test, the 5 or so vocabulary questions that just trip everyone up, because while you're so busy studying and reading, you just forget to remember those vocabulary sections at the end of the chapters. So get into the habit of keeping notes of those now. It'll make it so much easier as we go through. Another suggestion I have is as you take notes throughout the chapters, don't cover everything. There's no use to rewrite the whole textbook. However, there's always that good balance. I think that it's important to keep notes as you are reading, because personally I have ADD, so I know that if I don't keep notes, I'm going to forget everything. It's going to go in one ear and out the other. So in class and whenever I read, I need to take notes. But what I'll normally do is I will normally look over a subheading. So whenever you have chapter 1, for example, I would say chapter 1, there's a little introduction. That would be like a subheading, a bold title that says introduction, and it would say it. I would read that introduction, that paragraph or two, then I would summarize it. I would say introduction, and then maybe one sentence of what it said. And then it goes down, let's say it's talking about the Romans. Okay, a section on Hellenistic culture. Bam, just one sentence. Make sure just to give quick summaries that will help you remember, but that way you're not stressed out with writing out every single thing. In class, you're going to need to be writing more than that, but if you're reading, hopefully, if you're actively reading, not just letting your eyes look over the page, you'll remember. And keeping short notes will kind of make you pay attention better, because you have to summarize it, and you can't just write down every single word you see, and make sure that you actually know what you're talking about. Another thing to keep in mind that so many students forget, and I know this is early in the semester, but I'm going to put this little earworm for you all, is that some of us have a lot of trouble with these tests. Told you that there's a vocabulary section that's perhaps the most difficult, gave you some tips about how to take notes for that. There's also a biblical quotation section that I think is probably the other most difficult part, where Dr. Dawsey, it's not meant to trick you up, but it's just tricky anyway. He will have a quote that has been read in class or it's been assigned for homework from the Bible, and you'll need to say this is where it's from. You won't have to say the verse or the chapter number, but you would need to say, okay, this is from the Gospel of Matthew, or this is from Paul's letter to the Church of Corinth. And we'll get that as we go, but keep in mind that reading is so important. This isn't just like a traditional Sunday school class. This is actually a class where you're going to be questioned, in terms of some of your preconceived notions, things that you've been taught. And that's sometimes difficult, but make sure that you're reading, because those quotations will come up and vocab will come up. There's also a matching section. Sometimes there's a true and false and fill in the blank, and there's normally a take-home test option or a couple of short answer options on the test. So that's how the tests are laid out. It kind of runs the gamut. It has plenty of different components. Short answer, essay, vocabulary, fill in the blank, and biblical quotations. And you'll see that pretty much on every test, unless things are majorly changed from whenever I worked, which I doubt they are. That can give you an idea of what to expect. Make sure to come to class as well. I know Dr. Dawsey spoke of his experiences, not being at a university like Emory that takes attendance all the time. His experience is a little bit different with attendance. But I've found that the more you come to class, the better notes you take, the more you learn, and the easier it is for you to pass these tests, because they ultimately are really hard. No matter how good of a student you are, you can really struggle. And we'll make sure that we go through that, not to make any of you worry. We'll have test sessions, we'll try to make things fun, and we'll talk first about ways to take notes in class and just some studies questions, things that you may have to get familiar with on Sunday from 6 to 8 in Wiley. So make sure to come there and we'll become familiar, we'll introduce each other, and it'll be a good time. If you have any questions, please let me know. Make sure not to become too uncomfortable in the class. If you feel like you are being taught something that goes against your personal convictions, know that it's just the class, it's academics. It's not meant to undermine your beliefs in any way. And hopefully we can all appreciate that that'll make us better people in the end. So it's so good to meet you all. I appreciate you for watching over this video. Hopefully it's given you a bit of an idea in this about 12 minutes now of what to expect in the course. And I'm excited to meet you all. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. Until then, have a great day and have a really good first week of classes. Bye.